Woo! Welcome in, everybody. Nutmeg two. Oh, I can't speak. I can't even say my name. Nutmeg two. Palmetto here. Flying solo this week, giving Bucks McGee the week off to recuperate. And this week, week 13. Obviously, the big story so far was this 49ers game. They roll into Philly. We think like, okay, they're gonna really duke it out. NFC supremacy, all that good stuff. And that's not quite how things went. The Eagles really didn't look very good. You had Jalen Hurt got hurt some point in the middle of the game, left for a little bit, came back. Uh, AJ Brown didn't really look like he was getting involved in the game too much. Um, but Devontae Smith got involved. He caught a touchdown. That's been kind of a theme this year as far as like who the real targets are in Philly. You have a lot of Jalen's throws have been going to AJ Brown, not so much Jalen, not so much Jalen Hurts. Excuse me, not so much Devontae Smith. So the fact that Smith got in the end zone was, I guess, maybe a little bit of a silver lining to spread around the love in Philly, the brotherly love, so to speak. There was a tush push touchdown, of course, another day ending in Y. But yeah, they other than that, there really wasn't a whole lot of silver linings. They got taken to the woodshed. And the Niners obviously look really good. I mean, uh, they whooped up on Dallas earlier this season. Now they whooped up on Philly, so they are looking extremely, extremely tough compared to their contemporaries in the NFC. Um, Debo Samuel like CMC got the scoring well, he didn't get the scoring going, but he got the Niners going, got them chugging along pretty good early on. He did get in the end zone himself, but then Debo took over, and the rest of the game from the Niners offense perspective was the Debo show. So this one, yeah, you've got, and we'll get into the larger playoff picture in a bit, but you basically got the Niners now have a head-to-head tie break in the event of a tie. Um, with in the event of a tie with the Eagles, Eagles still have one game lead at the moment, but if they were to wind up in a tie, obviously the Eagles have that huge game against Dallas next week, and you've basically got a situation now where San Francisco is looking pretty if the Eagles were to fall to Dallas, because now they would, in such a case, they would both be 10-3, and they'd have the head-to-head tiebreaker. So the Niners, after that 3-game losing streak early in the season, where nothing looked like it was going right, now they're actually not in so bad a shape. And Philadelphia, I mean, we've discussed. I know if a beer day with TK watches the show or listens to the audio stream after the fact. I know he's been very critical of the Eagles this year. They've really been skating by a lot, and they got exposed a bit. The Niners went up and down the field with ease. Jalen looked a bit out of sorts and looked like his normal self. I mean, yeah, you got a touchdown, but it's the tush push. So you get him down on the one, Jalen Hurts going to score. So yeah, there's definitely some soul searching that needs to go on in Philadelphia after this one. And I guess that there's really, this is like kind of one of those games. We've had a couple of them this year where you just chalk up this game and, like, you know what, we got our butts handed to us. We're not gonna we got our butts handed to us. There's no positives to take out of this one. So let's just move on and figure out how we're gonna take on Dallas. You know what? Maybe it was. I feel like you could look at it from the perspective, okay, maybe this is a look past game. Maybe they're focused on Dallas. Obviously, it's a big rivalry. Division's going to be on the line because Dallas is also 9-3, and with Dallas might actually wind up being in first place should they beat the Eagles next week. But that so maybe the Eagles got caught in a look past game, but in all likelihood, I can't. I think this one, based on what the Eagles have looked like this year, I think that they're just. I think that they just kind of I think they just got outgunned and outmatched. And San Francisco has been rolling since that losing streak, and they didn't look like they were lost at all. So a lot of other games, obviously, there's a lot of other games occurring on this Week 13 Sunday, and a lot of implications in the AFC wildcard picture. We'll talk that one first. because my Colts won. Now, unfortunately, we're still in the 7th position, but obviously a win is a win. You got to hold on to that one of those wild card spots if you're in it. Back and forth game with Tennessee. Obviously, I would have liked that to not be as close as it was, but you know what? Like we always say, sometimes you got to win ugly. Sometimes the ugly ones are worth more than the blowouts. But the defense has looked. I'm so impressed with the defense this year. I figured they'd be good. I didn't think they were the weakness last year. I just thought they were on the field too much, and you know, having the quarterback situation being what it is this year, I was like, ooh, this could be another redux of last year. But they've been grinding out wins, really gritty. That's what I was trying to say. And they've been grinding out wins. Defense has been looking good, and the run games. Jonathan Taylor's going to miss a few games now with the thumb injury, but it's not so bad. We took care of business, even though it was a little closer than it should have been. Took care of business, beat Tennessee. I'm all for it. Obviously, like I said, we did not move up in the standings because where Pittsburgh also lost and Cleveland also lost. Obviously, we lose the head-to-head tiebreaker against Cleveland for that filthy pass interference disgrace several weeks back. And the Steelers have a better record against common opponents. So technically, we're still in 7th, but hey, a win's a win, and now we're all drawn even. So, we've got obviously that Cleveland game is in the past, but we do have Pittsburgh coming up in a week or two. So if we can beat them, get that head-to-head tiebreaker, hopefully, fingers crossed, and that will be in good shape there. Now, the Texans did win, however. We do currently have the head-to-head. We've got one more game in hand against them, but we did beat Houston earlier in the season. So we do have the head-to-head tiebreaker at the moment over the Texans. Denver, they beat Denver today. Tough game. Denver, obviously, they were on a heck of a winning streak so far at this current point in the season going into this game. And now, unfortunately for Houston, they lost Tank Dell. He fractured his leg in this game. So that's obviously a big loss. But you know what? Denver falls back to 6-6. Maybe they're done. Buffalo 6-6 as well. So that now as everyone's starting to separate at 7-5, unless one of these 7-5 teams collapses, 6-6 is looking a lot harder to get in. So that the Texans won, but you know what? We have the head-to-head over the Texans. I'm okay with I'm okay temporarily with them winning over Denver, not introducing the unknown into the equation. So Denver loses. Buffalo 6-6, so we're actually not looking on a bye week, so we're actually not looking so bad with the Steelers and the Browns coming back to the pack. We're all 7-5. Let's just ride it out and see how we're going, huh? Now the other South division. Now the other South division, of course, Colts in the AFC South. The NFC South is a little one. This is so funny because everyone in the NFC, all the current playoff teams, are either 9-3 or 6-6. The Falcons are one of those 6-6 clubs, and they are currently holding first place. So they win today. They beat the Jets. The Bucks win. They beat Carolina, hapless Carolina. Of course, that was the big news of the week. Frank Reich getting canned. Doesn't even get a full season in, but canned at 1-10. Now they fall to 1-11, so they're holding on to that number 1 draft pick, which is just going to go to the Bears anyway. And the Saints also lose. They got they were a tough one against the Lions. But the Lions pulled that one out. So you've got the Bucks win to come to 5-7. The Saints lose to fall to 5-7, and the Falcons win, drawing them to 6-6. That's good enough for first place. So this one's a weird one, of course, because you've got this division that could be 500 or worse. Well, I guess it won't be 500 because of 17 games. So it'll either be one game over or one game under. But I was looking at Atlanta's remaining schedule, and it's really not that daunting. So they have, and I'll just read this off. Next week they have the Bucks, so that could, in theory, put the nail in the Bucks' coffin for this for their chance of division. They would fall to 5-8. Obviously, they'd push Atlanta over 500, and they'd have what did that first game go? Falcons already won the first game in Tampa, and this one's in Atlanta. So in theory, Atlanta could have division sweep of the Bucks. make the Bucks fall back to 5-8. Might put a nail in that pervert. Well, they wouldn't technically be eliminated. It's still a little early, but put a effective proverbial nail in the coffin there, and there's that. And as the season goes, then they get the Panthers again. Of course, they're pretty terrible, so there shouldn't be too much there. They got a tough one. They welcome my club in, and I didn't realize Atlanta was hosting. I was like, maybe if the stars shine upon me, I can run down out to Atlanta, go to the game. But it is on Christmas Eve, so probably not. But in any event, they welcome the Colts to town. Obviously, we're going to have a lot to play for. We're going to have a lot on the line based on how our schedule goes. So we might that they let's hope that Indy can take care of business there, because that'll be a bit embarrassing. But then they close the season with the Bears. Obviously, the Bears are pretty deplorable this year, despite being 4-8. I think Matt Eberflus. I don't know if Matt Eberflus will save his job, but at least he's made enough of an argument to not be a complete shoo-in to get fired. And then they close the season with the Saints. So depending on what the Saints do, that game may not matter. Atlanta may have a pretty good foothold on that. Maybe they got a game lead. They don't necessarily need the win there. What was the previous one? Falcons did beat the Saints previously, so they are in very good shape. Obviously, they beat the Panthers already, because the Panthers' one win was not against them. So the Falcons are actually looking very good for this division. They've beat all three teams. They've got all three in their final 5 games, plus Indy, plus the Bears. So at least one of those two is, you could pretty much chalk it up to win. So Atlanta's actually looking pretty good as far as the race to close out this NFC South right now. And like I said, the Bucks, they've got a lot of injuries. Baker's been a little bit more inconsistent than he was earlier in the season. But next week obviously will tell a factor, because if Atlanta can pull off the win next week, then that might put an effective nail in Tampa's coffin. Now we'll talk the teams at the top. Obviously, Kansas City's playing Sunday night, but Miami won today. They won big. I mean, they're playing Washington. They're not a very good football club this year. Achane, second game back. He sat out last week. Looks like he's back to being the Devon Achane we saw earlier in the season, when he kind of took the league by storm as a rookie, and he scored twice in this one. And they are now tied with Baltimore, top of the AFC. They have a tiebreaker currently for a better record in conference games. You're welcome, Miami. I'm sure that Indy loss is not looking too good on Baltimore's ledger at the moment. But and the Dolphins look like they're fine-tuned. But again, this Dolphins team this year, they whoop up on all these clubs that are lesser well off, and just at the end of the day, not to be cliche, not very good. So they whoop up on all these clubs that aren't very good, and then they kind of limp out and don't look so hot against real contenders. So, and they actually have Dallas on the schedule, so that might be, and we'll double check that. For all we know, that might wind up being their next big test to prove if they can really hang with the big boys this year, and not just look like they whoop up on also Rams. They do have next week they actually have the Titans. So obviously that's going to be a lesser opponent that they should whoop up on. The week after that's the Jets, another lesser opponent they should whip up on. And then they've got two challenging ones. The Cowboys game aforementioned, and they play the Ravens after that. So that Ravens game could wind up deciding home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs. And then, of course, the Cowboys game that won't necessarily factor into the playoff picture too much, but obviously you want to look good against the Cowboys. You can't keep dropping the ball against teams that are supposed to be your contemporaries. And we'll go over the result of Kansas City's game against the Packers in a bit. Certainly for the Monday sidecar show. And then of course Jacksonville plays on Monday. So that one against Cincinnati. Cincinnati is obviously not looking quite like the Cincinnati of old, because Joe Burrow's done for the season. But you know what? hey, hats off Miami. You played great today. Achan looks like Achan's back, so that's good on you guys. That it's just you. This is just we have to see, and we got to wait another 2 weeks. Like I said, Tennessee Jets, they should beat those. They should beat those clubs. So got to wait a couple more weeks to see Miami against another example of elite competition. But this one, hey, you won big. You were supposed to. You whooped up on Washington. You did that. Achan looks great. So move on. Next couple weeks, you'll be fine. And then we'll see how you perform against better competition. Now, what do we got? NFC top of the end. That's the top of the AFC. So the top of the NFC now. That is, so of course, this San Francisco win. We already touched on that a bit, quite a bit actually, to start off the show. They are within a game now with Philly. They now have the head-to-head tiebreaker in the event of Philly losing to Dallas or dropping even another. Even if they win, drop another game later on in the season. We will run through their remaining schedule because that's probably pretty significant. So I will pull that up. We'll go through that really quick. The Niners have the Seahawks next week at home. Seattle's coming off that kind of wild shootout with the Cowboys. So extra rest, but right now the line's open and it looks like 12. So you know what? If the Niners just did this to the Eagles, they should handle Seattle pretty good. And who knows? That might put a nail in Seattle's coffin. Then they get the Cardinals. Obviously, that won't be very difficult, despite this win over Pittsburgh they just had. Then there's a huge Monday night game. They play the Ravens. So, I mean, who knows? That was obviously a Super Bowl rematch of several years ago, but who knows? That might be another Super Bowl rematch, Super Bowl preview this year. You never know. And then they finish with Washington, who they're not very good this year, and the Rams, who they're actually 6-6. So the Los Angeles Rams are somehow back in the playoff picture right now. And like I said, depending on what happens with Seattle, who the Rams swept this year, Seattle drops this game against San Francisco as you would expect. They'll both be 6-6. The Rams would have that tiebreaker. The Rams could see themselves right back into the playoff mix. Now, Philadelphia's remaining schedule, obviously the Cowboys next week, so that's huge. That'll decide the NFC East as it currently stands. Then they get the Seahawks. Even Philly playing with relatively weaker credentials right now, maybe looking like there's a chink in the armor, so to speak. They should handle Seattle, and then they get the Giants, they get the Cardinals, and then they close with the Giants again. So really, Philadelphia, after this Cowboys game next week, they should be on easy streak. Well, maybe it will be an easy streak to close the season. That they'll probably be looking fine there. But again, what kind of shape are they going to be? Because now they just lost to the Niners. If they lose to the Cowboys, the Niners keep winning, which we just went over the Niners schedule. It doesn't look that daunting outside of that Ravens game. You could wind up in a situation where it doesn't matter what the Eagles do, especially if they lose to Dallas. And and again, going back to the wild card picture, you could have a situation where maybe the Niners are resting in Week 18, and the Rams are wide open to get an easy opportunity to get in the playoff picture. So that's those ones. Now Detroit, they had a bit of a lead on New Orleans at one point this game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they were up 24-7 at halftime. Saints got it. Very interesting the second half. Sam Laporta, rookie, had a huge game, 9 catch, 140 yards and a touchdown. Kamara performed well. Derek Carr, not David Carr. Derek Carr, not a bad game. Taysom Hill was a bit of a Swiss Army knife. Olave, despite not scoring, he had a good game. Lions hold on here. They're 9-3. Their final schedule, their final games now. They get the Bears next week. That should be a win. They get the Broncos, who, they're hot, but this is at home. Broncos are coming off a loss, and who knows who they have next week. I don't even know if that's worth looking into. But that's looks like a Saturday NFL Network primetime game. So you're looking at, and then Minnesota, they get the Cowboys on a Monday nighter New Year's Eve. So that'll be a tough one, and that could very well decide playoff position and seeding in the playoffs, especially if Dallas could beat Philadelphia next week, and then they close with the Vikings again. So Lions not the easiest stretch to close the season, but also I'll tell you that Cowboys game not the hardest either. Um, so that's the top of the NFC. Now Dallas, of course, after that win on Thursday, where they kind of shootout win with Seattle. Like I said, I'm going to keep reiterating this Eagles game next week because it's so important. On Sunday Night Football, of course, in prime time. Now their close of the season might be probably on par with the Lions as far as the next hardest schedule to close. They do get Buffalo, which of course has been a staple on this show of being fraudulent. Had to get that in for Bucks McGee. So Dallas should whoop up on them. I would not have any doubt in them whooping up on Buffalo. And you know what? That'll probably wind up being the nail in Buffalo's coffin. Now, the next game, of course, is that Dolphins game we talked about. That's going to be as big as that. It's probably bigger for Miami because they have not like we've been talking, like we've mentioned several times this year. They are not playing well against their contemporaries, so it's probably got more pressure on the Dolphins. But the Cowboys are in this razor tight finish to the end, and Phillies, if they get past this Dallas game, they've got a significantly easier stretch to close the season. So it is still pretty important for Dallas to take this one. Dallas to show out against Miami because not only is Miami an exceptional team, but they're razor tight in here with Detroit, and that, of course, that Detroit game we just talked about is the following week. They have the Dolphins and then Detroit. Fortunately for them, the Detroit game is at home, but the Dolphins game's on the road, so that's a little rough. And then they get to close the season in Washington. That shouldn't be very hard at all. So, yeah, the Niners probably have the easiest. Well, that's not true. I'll say after next week's Cowboys Eagles game, the Eagles probably have the easiest one because if you figure everyone's hardest opponents, you're looking at the Niners. They just have the Baltimore game that should be difficult. Outside of getting a really fired up Rams team to close the season, but if the Niners don't have anything clinched, they're not going to take that game off. They're only taking that game off if for some reason they've got a nice lead on Philly plus the tiebreak. And Detroit has that. Detroit has, of course, this Dallas game plus Denver, which obviously is not as that significant an opponent. And the Eagles just have Seattle. So I'd probably say Seattle. That's probably harder. So, Detroit. So, Dallas really probably has the hardest schedule of all of them because they've got these 3 games in a row. Well, that's not true. 3 out of 4. And, Buffalo, we're down on Buffalo. We know that. I don't foresee any reason why Dallas wouldn't whoop up on them. However, if their stats, it's still Josh Allen, still Stephon Diggs, the defenses still got a ton of talent. Obviously, Von Miller's probably not going to see the field for a little while, but who knows how plea bargainings and that sort of thing work out. But that it's still Buffalo. They've still got a ton of talent, even though they're not producing to the level they should. So Dallas easily has the hardest schedule to finish of this bunch, but you never know how things fall out. I mean, the way things have gone, if Miami just lays an egg and kind of doesn't play the competition, that significantly hurts them. Detroit's been up and down this year. They've generally been good. They've been sneaking out a lot of tight games, much like Philly. And at this point, I'd probably say Edge Niners are the number 1 seed in the NFC, but who knows? Now, going into the primetime game, the Chiefs are hosting Green Bay Sunday night, and that's kicking off. I just kicked off a few moments ago, probably, and that one's going to be a tough one because this has likewise with the Rams. The Rams have somehow gotten back in the playoff picture. The Packers somehow have gotten back in the playoff picture, and the Chiefs, Bucks McGee obviously has been down on them a lot this year. So if for some reason they slip up tonight in this game that just kicked off, and the Packers kind of keep up the hot streak they've been on. Jaden Reed's, I think he's scored it. Well, not caught a touchdown, so rushing touchdown. Scored a touchdown in a couple consecutive games now, and Jordan Love's obviously looked a lot more consistent. So I think that if the Packers can catch Kansas City off guard, you could have a situation where Kansas City falls back. Now they're 8-3. Jacksonville obviously plays Monday night. They're 8-3. So if they both win, you've got a 4-way logjam at 9-3 with the division winners, and that would be all the division winners. Yeah, all the wildcard teams are 7-5. So you've got four division winners in the AFC at 9-3, assuming that these two leaders win. But we don't want to. But I don't necessarily want to assume that because Kansas City's been a bit shaky at times this year, and Green Bay's playing hot right now. Like I said, Jaden Reed's been hot. They're getting something out of running, and Jordan Love's look a lot more consistent lately. So I'm excited to watch this game. I'm going to go do that. I will wrap up this game, talk a little bit about Monday's game for the Monday wrap up show, which you can catch every Monday. Aside from last week, we had a little schedule cross, but normally our Monday morning quarterback show every Monday morning, and this is a repurpose of this live show plus wrap up of the Sunday nighter. And as always, normally obviously we didn't do it this past week, but normally our preview show is every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. on both YouTube and Rumble, and catch that at that time slot on those two platforms, and you can always catch the audio platform on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So I'm gonna go catch this Chiefs game. Y'all enjoy your Sunday night. Hope you enjoy these games. Hopefully your team won. And as Bucks McGee says, see you next time.